Yeah, it's kind of interesting about Beric, and we'll get to him. Like you said, this is kind of a short chapter, so there's not a ton to break down from it. And I want to get your thoughts on here, Jimmy, about this. When they're talking about what's happened to Beric Dondarrion, do you think that all of the members of the Brotherhood Without Banners know that Thoros is actually resurrecting him, or do you think some of it, or do you think it's possible that some just think, oh, he got injured?
I think just like the reader in this chapter, we are probably doubting it a little bit, not looking ahead and knowing what we know. We're like, okay, so he
If
removed
you
the
were
thing.
reading this for the first time, yeah.
Yeah, he removed a lance, right? I think it says a lance that was like 2 feet embedded into his chest or something like this, and he felt even better the next morning. And it's like that might be something you say to someone to try to give them the will to live through such a devastating injury. Like, you look better than ever, Beric. But then you hear multiple accounts of him being cut down and this and that. And I imagine it's probably pretty split. I imagine the people who have visually seen him come back from these things are believers. And then the other ones who have joined up and maybe not have seen it or only seen certain ones probably don't. And I think as readers, the first time through, we're also thinking that and doubting it, because a lot of stuff in the series is interpreted as magic or something fantastical, and it ends up being a little bit more mundane. However, I think it's pretty clear that there's something up with Thoros of Myr and something going on with Beric Dondarrion. And we know this because in Feast for Crows, we see Thoros say that he would not give the kiss to Lady Stoneheart when they found Catelyn. He did not want to do it. And then that's when Beric Dondarrion passed the flame of life to Catelyn's corpse instead. And the so-called Lady Stoneheart now leads the Brotherhood after Beric's passing. And this is actually going against Thoros's best wishes, and it's kind of put him in a weird spot where he's like, I didn't really agree to follow a zombie lady. This isn't exactly what we were after from the get-go. So the Brother Without Banners kind of changes over the next 2-3 books, which is really fascinating. And a lot of it has to do with the application of this, whatever this is, this fantastical element, whether it's religious based or it's blood magic based or whatever it might be. It causes a change within the Brotherhood. So I think as a first time reader, you look at this and you're probably doubting it, but little do we know that Beric Dondarrion is kind of unkillable, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean, I'm going to read it right here too. I mean, I saw the mountain slay Raymond Derry with a single blow so terrible that it took Derry's arm off at the elbow and killed the horse beneath him. Glad and Wild died there with him, and Lord Mallory was ridden down and drowned. We had lions on every side, and I thought I was doomed with the rest, but Alan shouted commands and restored order to our ranks. And those still a horse rallied around Thoros, and we cut our way free. 60 we'd been that morning. By dark, no more than 20 were left, and Lord Beric was gravely wounded. Thoros drew a foot of lance from his chest that night and poured boiling wine into the hole it left. Every man of us was certain his lordship would be dead by daybreak, but Thoros prayed with him all night beside the fire, and when dawn came, he was still alive and stronger than he'd been. It was a fortnight before he could mount a horse, but his courage kept us strong. He told us that our war had not ended at the Mummers Ford, but only begun there, and that every man of ours who'd fallen would be avenged tenfold. By then, the fighting had passed us on. The mountains men were only in the van of Lord Tywin's host. They crossed the Red Fork in strength and swept up into the Riverlands, burning everything in their path. We were so few that all we could do was hurry their rear, but we told each other we'd join up with King Robert when he marched west to crush Lord Tywin's rebellion. Only then we heard that Robert was dead, and Lord Eddard as well, and Cersei Lannister's whelp had ascended the Iron Throne. They turned the whole world on its head. We'd been sent out by the king's hand to deal with outlaws, you see, but now we're the outlaws.
Yeah, they were in a rock and a hard place. And I think that they wanted to try to do the just thing. And also, these people are out in the land. Like, they're seeing what is happening. They've seen what the mountain has done. And they are saying this isn't right. The new people in charge are corrupt all along. I think it's also very telling in this chapter that I think it was Harwin. I might be wrong about this, but essentially they're talking about the 6 Winterfell men that remained of the 20 her father had sent with Beric Dondarrion. Harwin told her, and they were scattered. It was a trap, me lady. And then he talks about how the whole mountain thing going across the land and raising the farms and raiding and all this stuff was on purpose so that Eddard Stark would ride out himself and then be captured or killed to trade for Tyrion. I thought that was fascinating. Do you think it's true?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because remember, Ned Stark is still alive. He just got captured
Yes, and this
So
is before
Tywin was
Rob
already
went to war.
right. Yeah, Tywin was already planning this. I mean, you
Mhm.
have to amass troops and an army and everything. So that was already in the works when Catelyn captures Tyrion.
Yes,
But then,
and
so but then remember Tyrion shows up at the camp. So then
mhm.
he still knows what's going on.
So this is a really
But
good example.
at that point it's Robb. He's fighting Robb.
Yeah, so at this point in the story, Tyrion would have been captured, and Rob hadn't went to war yet because Eddard's alive, right? So
Mhm.
this is a really good example of Tywin not trusting his children and it coming back to bite him. If he would just let Jaime know, hey, this is the plan. Like, we're going to capture Eddard Stark, make a trade for Tyrion, and then try to patch this thing. I don't think he would have killed Eddard at this point in the story, actually. I think that would have been a really bad move for the Lannisters because Tywin didn't want to go to war. I don't think Tywin was like, I am really excited about going to war with the entire North. I don't think that was his plan.
Well, that may have been that honestly might have been a really stupid move.
To capture him or to kill him. Because I
Well,
think killing Eddard Stark.
that actually raises another question too. Did Tywin know that Cersei was going to kill Robert?
Ooh.
Because you have to think about that for a second. For Tywin to say, I want to capture Ned Stark, who is Hand of the King
Mm-hmm.
at that time, and Robert is still alive at that time, right? Tywin would be going against directly against Robert and capturing Ned Stark.
Mm-hmm.
So did Tywin know that Cersei was planning on killing Robert? Because if that
Woo!
doesn't happen, then Robert's not going to be too happy because he will always side with Ned before I mean, maybe not always, but I felt like he would have sided with Ned and been like even more furious about the whole thing.
I like what you're saying there because without the confirmation that Robert is not going to be king anymore, you're right. I mean, that's a move against the crown at that point.
All
And
right.
Robert certainly, certainly.
Because it all kind of happens all at once.
Yes, these are it's a domino effect. You move one piece out, it's not going to work. So I'm with you. The only thing that gives me pause about Tywin knowing is the fact that they don't mention it in any of their conversations. That makes me pause a little bit because we get a lot of Cersei Tywin conversations post Robert's death, and they never really mention it, at least not that I remember. I don't think there's any hints towards him knowing that. Also, I would argue that Tywin may possibly would not have wanted Robert dead. Like, Robert dying wasn't really good for the realm, was it? And not to mention that his grandchildren were going to inherit the throne anyway. So there's no reason to really expedite Robert's death from Tywin's perspective, unless if he is worried about the incest coming out, which is definitely possible. There's a lot of angles to this.